Hey, what's up guys, Bajheera here. So, I've got a long list of Warlords of Draenor Warrior Updates to share with you guys. And what I'm going to be talking about mainly are going to be our abilities, talents, glyphs, and new things called perks. Now this video is going to be a lot of information, so hang in there. And of course, the information is coming from the alpha, so a lot of this stuff is subject to change. So, let's get down into these Warlords of Draenor Warrior Ability changes. Battle Shout now lasts 1 hour and no longer generates rage. Same thing with Commanding Shout. The little bit of extra rage was always nice, but I can understand why they're taking it out. Just gotta pare things down a little bit, no worries. Lasting an hour, that is cool though, so good to know. Berserker Rage no longer generates rage or increases physical damage dealt. I think what they wanted to do here was make Berserker Rage only a fear breaker, and not give it, okay, so you gotta have a CC and you deal extra damage. Hate to see the damage aspect of it go, but you know what? I understand what Blizzard's trying to do with Warlords of Draenor, and it's fine with me. So, Berserker stance has been removed. That has always pretty much been a useless stance for warriors, and even though it's been sort of the history of warriors, it's going to be removed for now. We'll see if that sticks. Cleave has also been removed, and that's an ability that had some usefulness during the Taste for Blood days. And maybe if you wanted to use the glyph that made Heroic Strike and Cleave slow people, and then give them a root shout, other than that, it didn't really have much use. Reducing action bar clutter, not really all that sad to see it go. Now, Demoralizing Banner has been removed. That was a pretty useful sort of party cooldown, also really nice to be able to intervene to that Demoralizing Banner, so that's gonna hurt a little bit, but it's all good. I understand that Warlords of Draenor does have to reduce just the multitude of abilities out there, and I'm okay with a more streamlined game. We'll see how it affects the gameplay. Now, something that has some pretty solid positives, but also a few drawbacks, is the fact that Hamstring is now a passive ability that causes Mortal Strike, Bloodthirst, Revenge, and Raging Blow to also reduce the target's movement speed by 50% for 15 seconds. So, that sounds really cool. You're not going to be spending Rage on Hamstring. However, if you're an Arms Warrior and your Mortal Strike gets parried, you don't have a slow on your target, so that probably is going to mean that Warriors will have to spec into Piercing Howl to have some sort of reliable slow outside of their Mortal Strike. However, if your Mortal Strike does land, and there's a good chance that it will since Dodge and Parry have all been but removed from the game, it's going to save you not only some range, but also a global cooldown to use more damaging abilities, which is pretty cool. Now, Rallying Cry is no longer available to Protection Warriors. I imagine they will still have their last stand, but their raid-wide utility is going to be nerfed a little bit, which I guess it might encourage some raids to bring along some DPS warriors instead of just relying on their Prot Warrior to bring the entire warrior utility kit to the table. In addition to that, Recklessness is now only available to Fury and Arms Warriors. I'm not really sure how Prot Warriors are going to feel about that, but hey guys, you're not that reckless. You're hiding behind a shield and stuff, so, I don't know if that's going to apply to you. But they're not only taking stuff away from Prot Warriors, because Skull Banner has been removed as well. However, the Skull Banner mechanic of increasing your critical strike damage has been added into Recklessness, so not only will Rec increase your crit chance, it will also increase your crit damage. However, that does mean that you won't be able to drop Skull Banner for your Elemental Shaman, your Mage partner, whoever you're in your raid with to increase raid-wide crit damage. It's only going to affect you, so that's kind of a nerf in terms of Warriors' raid utility for sure. But whenever I see nerfs like this, it just reminds me that Blizzard is trying to scale things down, make Warlords of Draenor maybe a little bit simpler of an expansion, not have so much stuff going on, and really get back to basics. Now, probably the most earth-shattering nerf that is going to occur to Warriors, and that's going to have outcries across the forums, everybody's going to stop playing Warriors, is the fact that Throw has been removed. I know, guys, I'm questioning whether I'm going to play a Warrior in Draenor now, too, but, we'll have to soldier on without our Throw ability. That tiny little infant baby damage that Throw did was just invaluable to our kit as a Warrior, but we'll just tweet at Hlinka and life will go on. On a slightly more serious note, Thunderclap is now no longer available to Fury Warriors, but likewise, Whirlwind is now only available to Fury Warriors, so the AoE for an Arms and Prot Warrior is going to be some Thunderclap, and Fury Warriors are still going to have their Whirlwind, so it's all good. I think that makes sense. Haven't really been using Whirlwind much as my Arms Warrior, so can't say I'm too upset about that. And the Prot Warrior Unwavering Sentinel now also reduces the chance for attacks to be parried by 3%, so that's kind of neat. Devastate no longer applies the weakened armor debuff because that debuff has been removed from the game, and Thunderclap no longer applies the weakened blows debuff. As I noted before, Sunder Armor has been removed, so they're taking out some of the debuffs that cause increased damage or reduced damage, and that makes sense to me. I did like sundering up a target with Colossus Smash Glyph and then dealing more damage to them, but It all makes sense in the grand scheme of the way Warlords of Draenor is trying to simplify things, and I'm okay with it. And something I'm not really okay with is the fact that charge now roots the target instead of stunning it. The root effect does not share a diminishing return with other roots, but that's probably because it breaks on damage or something stupid like that. However, there is a sort of light at the end of the tunnel here, is the fact that Warbringer now causes charge to stun the target for 1.5 seconds instead of rooting it. And the reason they're making this decision, I mean, I can understand it, is that the control of a stun on a 12-second cooldown they thought was a little bit too much, and probably would be a little bit too much, especially with the way Warlords of Draenor is trying to shape up. There's going to be less CC. CC is not going to last as long. More things are going to DR. More things are going to be dispellable. And okay, we'll work with it. Disarm has also been removed, but they don't just mean the warrior ability to disarm. They mean the entire mechanic of a disarm has been taken out of the game, and that's all right. We're losing a little bit of CC, but so is everybody else. It's going to streamline things. It's all good. Intimidating Shout now has a 6-second duration in PvP, down from 8 seconds. So once again, they're reducing the number of CCs and the amount of time you're CC'd. I think a lot of people are going to find that to be a much more enjoyable game type. I'm kind of curious to see how it's going to affect Arena, but that's all part of the fun, and I'm looking forward to it. And something else I'm very much looking forward to is Headlong Rush, which means that haste reduces the global cooldown and the cooldowns of Mortal Strike, Bloodthirst, Shield Slam, and Thunderclap for warriors. Now, how cool is that? We finally get a use for haste. Now, I'm not necessarily saying I'm going to go haste as #1 stat, but maybe a crit haste build is something to experiment with, or maybe you should go all haste. That's going to be part of the fun with experimenting in the alpha or beta, or once it goes live, of course, but who knows, man. But the fact that we get haste on our gear and it's going to do something for us, that's going to be pretty cool. And I am very much looking forward to experimenting with that. I think that could be probably one of the most exciting things for warriors in Warlords of Draenor so far. And the mechanic of Riposte now gives the warrior a 100% chance to parry until they parry an attack after getting a critical strike with an auto attack. So this is something I'm not really so sure of how it's going to affect the strength of Second Wind in general. Second Wind no longer directly heals the warrior while active. Instead, Second Wind grants the warrior 10% leech while active, which causes the warrior to heal for 10% of all damage and healing done by the warrior while active. So what they, I think, are trying to do here is instead of being able to like heroic leap behind a pillar and let Second Wind tick, in order to use Second Wind, you gotta still be hitting people and have that damage that you're dealing heal you. So I think it's a cool mechanic. I think lifesteal is kind of an interesting thing to bring into the World of Warcraft universe. And having to stay offensive while low health, I don't know. I think that's a fine thing for a warrior to have to do. It keeps, you know, it maintains the immersion, right? Just because you're hurt doesn't mean you're gonna stop fighting. Means you might have to go balls to the wall and pop offensive cooldowns to heal yourself. It's definitely a nerf, I'd say, but I think it's still pretty cool. And in a similar vein of being a nerf but still pretty cool is the fact that Bladestorm is now a level 90 talent, and Stormbolt is now a level 60 talent. So you basically have to choose which stun you would like out of Shockwave, Stormbolt, and Dragon Roar, and which offensive cooldown you'd like, whether it's Bloodbath, Avatar, or Bladestorm. So it's definitely going to change the sort of either stun stacking or damage cooldown stacking prevalent warrior specs like Stormbolt, Shockwave, or Bloodbath, Bladestorm, those sorts of things. You're going to have to make your decisions a little bit more differently, but I think it'll work out for the better. At least better for the direction that Blizzard seems to be trying to take Warlords of Draenor in. And along with Bladestorm, Bladestorm no longer allows the use of Shouts while active. It does still allow the use of Taunt, Enraged Regen, Shield Wall, and Last Stand. So you can't fear while Bladestorming, which isn't a great idea anyway. But they said you can still use Shield Wall, and you could never use Shield Wall in a Bladestorm before, I don't think. So maybe that's a little, like, ninja buff. You can Bladestorm and then Shield Wall? Like, okay, that's kind of cool, I guess. And as I mentioned before, Stormbolt is now level 60 talent, swapping places with Bladestorm. Another thing is that Enrage now increases all damage, up from only physical damage, and that's because one of our level 100 talents is going to be Fiery Weapon, which causes us to deal nothing but fire damage. And they still want us to be able to benefit from our Enrage effect while dealing fire damage. So, same thing with Fury. Their Mastery, Unshackled Fury, now increases all damage up from only physical damage. Now, this is kind of interesting, and it makes sense in terms of like an immersion standpoint, but I don't know how it'll affect PvP. We'll find out. It's a little bit of a nerf, but I don't know, kind of a cool idea. Deep Wounds now last 15 seconds, or until the target is fully healed. So, I guess that makes sense. If you fully heal somebody, they're no longer going to have Deep Wounds, right? That's kind of what that implies. So, I guess you got to keep your bleeds up, boys, but, you know, it's kind of a cool idea. We'll see if it sticks. And that is, however, going to bring us to the end of the sort of warrior abilities section. I'm pretty sure I got it all, and if I need to make more videos in the future, you know I will. So what we're going to do now is move on to the level 100 warrior talents. And we're going to be able to choose between anger management, which every 30 rage that we spend reduces the remaining cooldown of your readiness affected abilities by 1 second. And what this kind of reminds me of is some of these current raiding trinkets where they reduce the cooldown of some of your big cooldowns, like recklessness or shield wall. Kind of sounds a little bit like that to me. And I know this isn't WoW, but there are also mechanics like that are present in Diablo. So these mechanics do exist in Blizzard games, and we may be seeing them in Warlords of Draenor now. So for every 30 rage you spend, you get 1 second off the cooldown of recklessness or something like that, which could be pretty cool. Especially since it encourages you to really get in the battle, mix it up, you know, use as many of these big rage spender abilities as you can, because it'll bring your cooldowns back up. I like that mechanic. Another ability that we have to choose from is probably more of like a PvE or definitely like a prot warrior talent, which is called Ravager. You throw a whirling axe at the target location that inflicts 1 plus 30% of your attack power damage to enemies within 8 yards every 1 second. This lasts 15 seconds, and the reason I think it's kind of a prot warrior thing is because it's AoE in a targeted location, but it also increases your parry chance by 20% for 15 seconds. So that's kind of a cool little ability. You know, I definitely can, like I said, see it being used by a prot warrior in PvE where you're going to throw that Ravager down, it's going to deal damage to a group of mobs or one mob while increasing your parry chance. It's a pretty cool idea. Now the third one we have to choose from is called Ignite Weapon. This is going to replace Heroic Strike, so as you'll see at the end, it's off GCD. It's going to cost 30 rage, but it ignites your weapon and deals 100% weapon damage, 140% if a one-handed weapon is equipped as fire, and causes your auto attacks to deal fire damage for 10 seconds. So that's a cool idea. It's changing your damage over to fire damage. I thought before it was going to deal all of your damage as fire damage and give you like a boost to that damage, but it's looking a little bit different right here at least, so I'm thinking the anger management might be the talent that I end up going with. It sounds really fun. Like every slam you do gives you basically 1 second off your rec cooldown. That sounds badass. But of course, who knows if it's gonna work that way? That's just kind of how it sounds to me. We'll have to see how everything turns out. You know, this is information data mined from alpha. So, you know, take it for what you will. In addition to all these new changes and talents we're also getting a new glyphs, starting with the glyph of Cleave. So, if you really, really love Cleave, you can still spend way too much rage to deal way too little damage to 2 targets by using Glyph of Cleave, which will make your Heroic Strike now hit 2 targets. Now, for a really, really cool glyph, by the sound of it at least, is called the Glyph of the Drawn Sword. Each time you parry while Die by the Sword is active, you gain 5 rage. So, that's going to allow you to go very offensive even while popping a defensive cooldown, which sounds like a very warrior kind of thing to do. And we saw that being encouraged both by Second Wind and as something you'll see here in a minute. The Glyph of Heroic Leap increases your speed by 70% for 10 seconds after using Heroic Leap, which is currently our 4-piece PvP bonus, so that does suggest to me that we will be getting a different 4-piece PvP bonus, but be forced to glyph for that nice little speed boost after using Heroic Leap. Now, kind of funky glyph is going to be the Glyph of Mocking Banner. Your Mocking Banner now causes creatures to attack the tank specialization player you had targeted when placing the Mocking Banner instead of attacking you. So, if you're one of those warriors who just does way too much damage in raids, you can make a little Mocking Banner macro that targets your tank and then uses Mocking Banner to keep the aggro off you. It's a cool idea, I guess. It brings a little bit of warrior utility to the table, I suppose. And here's what I was mentioning a few moments ago about popping in defensive cooldowns and then proceeding to go more offensive as a result. Glyph of Rallying Cry. While your Rallying Cry is active, you also gain 20% leech, healing you for 20% of all damage and healing you cause. So, we see Second Wind granting you life leech when you're low, Rallying Cry giving you life leech when you use it, and Die by the Sword giving you rage while you use it. So, I don't know, it's kind of a lot of defensive cooldowns encouraging you to go offensive when you're in kind of a tight spot. It's an interesting idea, but something that definitely fits the warrior class. And since Shattering Throw was removed, we're going to be now seeing the Glyph of Shattering Throw, which teaches you the ability. And Shattering Throw will now throw your weapon at the enemy, causing a little bit of damage, or removing any invulnerabilities. So this might be a situational glyph whenever you're fighting mages or paladins or things like that. We're also getting a Glyph of Flawless Defense, which means you have a 25% reduced chance for attacks against you to be critical strikes while Shield Wall is active. So kind of a stronger Shield Wall. Those are all some pretty neat glyphs to choose from, and definitely I can see some situational pickups. maybe a few necessary pickups, but overall, nice little batch of glyphs to play around with in Warlords of Draenor. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is something that's going to be completely new to the Warlords of Draenor expansion, and that is the perk system. So, we know that the Warlords of Draenor expansion is trying to address the issue of having way too many abilities, and they don't want to just take away a lot of abilities and then give us new ones. So, instead of gaining new abilities as we level, we will be gaining perks that boost the effectiveness of the abilities that we already have. And how they're going to go about doing this is as we level from 90 to 100, perks will be gained in a random order, but by the time we hit level 100, we will have all the perks permanently. One of the things to note is that these perks can and do vary by spec, so we're going to take a look at the different perks for Arms, Fury, and Prot Warriors right now. For Arms, we're going to see an improved charge, increases the range of charge by 10 yards. We're going to have improved Heroic Leap, which makes the damage radius of our Heroic Leap increased by 2 yards. We get improved Die by the Sword, which increases the damage reduction from Die by the Sword by 10%. That is so beast. Speaking of beast, we get Empowered Execute, which makes Execute deal 50% more damage. Thank goodness. We needed it. And we're also going to get improved Colossus Smash, which means Colossus Smash now generates 10 rage when hitting a target, which is sweet. The more rage generation, the better, especially when it fits smoothly into our damage rotation. Next up, we're going to see Enhanced Sweeping Strikes. Sweeping Strikes now last 5 seconds longer. That's very cool. Improved Mortal Strike. Now this is what I'm talking about. Increases the damage of Mortal Strike by 20%. Yeah, don't even give me any more abilities, man. Just make that Mortal Strike hit harder. I love that. We also get Enhanced Slam, which increases the radius of the splash damage dealt by a slam while Sweeping Strikes is active by 3 yards. So that's kind of cool. Sweeping Strike Slam is a ton of fun to use, and having it hit a little bit wider radius, that's also nice. You know, I appreciate that. And this last perk made me so happy, and not just because it increases the damage dealt by Overpower by 20%, which is awesome. It's the fact that it exists. Overpower has not been taken out of the game, which is what I thought was going to happen, judging from the earlier alpha footage we saw. So, judging by this, Overpower is still in the game, guys. That is so sick, and it's getting beefier by a 20% increased damage perk. So, sweet. That's going to round out the Arms perks, but now we get to look at these Fury perks. So, improved Meat Cleaver. Meat Cleaver now grants 2 charges every time Whirlwind deals damage. That's up from 1, so that's neat. Bigger and better Raging Blows. Can't be mad about that one. Improved Wild Strike. Damage of Wild Strike increased by 40%. That's a huge buff to Wild Strike. Improved Bloodthirst. Increases the damage and healing of Bloodthirst by 20%. That's awesome. Improved Raging Blow. Increases the damage of Raging Blow by 20%. Oh my gosh, all these damage buffs. Is Fury back? We'll see. Improved Heroic Leap. The damage radius of Heroic Leap is increased by 2 yards. We saw this as Arms as well, so some of these are definitely going to be just across the board. So basically all of these, like Improved Charge, Improved Die by the Sword, Empowered Execute, and Improved Colossus Smash, are all things that we saw in Arms spec, but are also very, very cool and definitely very useful to Fury. It's going to be interesting to see how Fury balances out in Warlords of Draenor, because we all know that's a pretty fun spec to play. We'll see how it goes. And now we're going to take a look at the Prot perks. We got Improved Heroic Throw. Heroic Throw no longer has a cooldown. Oh boy, pull all the mobs. Improved Shield Slam. Increases the damage of Shield Slam by 20%. Improved Revenge. Looking pretty familiar. A lot of your main abilities are having their damage increased by 20%. Very cool. Improved Shield Barrier. Increases the absorb amount of Shield Barrier by 10%. And Improved Unwavering Sentinel. Unwavering Sentinel now increases your armor by an additional 15%. Get those massive armor values on your Prot Warrior. We've got Improved Bastion of Defense. Bastion of Defense now increases your block chance by an additional 10%. That's cool because you're going to have a lot of parry and dodge removed from the game, so you're going to need some more mitigation from armor and block chance, I suppose. So, Improved Thunderclap increases the damage of Thunderclap by 20%, and then we're going to have your Improved Heroic Leap and Improved Charge rounding out the Warrior perks. So, in terms of closing thoughts, guys, I am so pumped for Warlords of Draenor. I know a lot of these changes sometimes come as a shock. You see like half of your abilities taken out, and you're like, oh my god, I'm gonna be nothing compared to everybody else. However, most classes are experiencing pretty much the same thing that you are. this is going to be a very more streamlined World of Warcraft expansion. It's going to make a lot more sense in terms of the damage numbers, and I think it's going to make a lot more sense in terms of the ability choice that you have and the amount of CC in the game as well. So a lot of these things are pretty intuitive changes, really good on Blizzard, taking a look at their game, giving it a, you know, kind of a stern assessment of what needs to change, and having the courage to actually go through with it. So I think we're in for a really good expansion, maybe even the best one yet. And once again, I'm very excited about it. Hope you guys are too. So this is going to bring us to the end of my sort of Warlords of Draenor changes and updates video. Of course, there are going to be plenty more updates on the way because this is just early alpha. Really got to give a huge thanks to Wowhead, MMO Champion, and WoW Insider for providing such great information that I get to share with you guys. So keep up the good work, everybody. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace!